I am getting tired of waiting for the conference on the conference to end.
Those poor fools thought it was a 2-day event, and after Saturday they melted back into everyday life as if it was an awkward question and answer period hijacked by Stacey Ho.
It may be a mistake to draw such a sharp demarcation between the entity called the conference on the conference and everyday life.
But without a principle of demarcation, how will we be able to find evaluative criteria for assessment of the piece? Contrary to the general understanding, it was not only the ghost of Martin Bartlett haunting the conference on the conference, but Jeff Wall's criticism of platforms inducing event structures as tentative yet spectacular models of new social forms rooted in community action, ephemeral forms of labor, critical urbanism, deconstructivist tourism, theatricalized institutional critique, anarchic interactive media games, radical pedagogies, strategies of wellness, hobbies and therapies, rusticated technologies of shelter, theatres of memory, populist historiographies, and 1,000 other stations, sites, and plateaus.
In order to set aside the assumption that the conference on the conference was an event or an object, I prefer to use a vocabulary that does not carry the prejudices of these terms, either performative or pictorial. This is why I choose the term entity. Of course, the question of the non-existence of the work, its being and being judged in absentia in the defense to come, remains open and sprawling. The notion that the conference on the conference joins the long march through institutional critique is as much hooey as rote invocation of the dematerialized object or relationalism.
I concur. But we must admit the presence of self-contained events and objects within the entity, a proliferation of the mise en abîme, but as the term for grasping a totality that may or may not exist. Entity itself may be too prejudicial in favor of existence constituted by a proper name, the conference on the conference. The conference on the conference may have its baggage, but existence may not be one of the items within which it adheres.
That acroacoustic room was something else.
It was perfect for Chris Anderson's hybrid discursive con music. But I can't believe we missed Vikram Urchidakana's Ship of Fools, the adaptation of Theodore Kaczynski's forgotten short story, because we were following that guy who was on all the panels around like he was a docent. I didn't realize his presence was a misdirection until near the end of the second day of the conference on the conference. I should have listened to Donato Mancini.
Yes. I believe Ashok Mathur provided the best summary of the foremost imperative. Frequently and repetitively it is worth referencing the theme of the conference, even when it has no relevance to your paper. Equally important is to show currency by referencing papers that were delivered in keynotes, earlier panels, and by fellow panelists. Nothing is looked upon more favorably than hearing your own name uttered at conferences, so liberally pepper your acknowledgments and extemporizations with the names of colleagues, even those whose work you despise.
I despise all of my colleagues.
That is not hard to do when you are unemployed.
You have obviously not read Michael Denning's article on wageless life in the recent New Left Review. The word unemployment did not even exist in the English language until a bureaucrat in Massachusetts deployed it in the 1870s. I noticed that those crime-think fellows who rolled through town a few days before the conference on the conference made the same error of conflating refusal of work with voluntary unemployment rather than deepening the refusal within the terrain of social reproduction, a terrain that they themselves acknowledge as primary.
I cannot argue with that. Did you see the animations that Joe Hall prepared regarding the conference on the conference day 1 and the conference on the conference day 2?
I was in stitches. But he should have made reference to Jim Delos Ray's leaving because of Nicholas Perrin's remarks and attended more to what Andreas Carr referred to as the jaunty little on of the conference on the conference. While it was the preposition that secured replies to the call for papers, it was the selfsome preposition that ensnared participants into acting as if they were at a conference.
Ensnared perhaps implies that there was a subject setting a trap. But the conference on the conference was no hoax in the tradition of the European historical avant-garde. All the same, we may wonder why the social antagonisms did not spill over into open conflict.
I was waiting for Mo Salami to interrupt the keynote to demand that Jerry address the silence over Palestine,
just like he did to Jacques Rancière. I had looked forward to that too, but Mohammed claims he was busy with an essay for his curatorial studies program at UBC and nobody challenged the arbitrary ending. People believed we had to vacate the room when in fact there was no dance class scheduled for 8 p.m.
It was a ruse. What, in the National Post article, the conference on the conference administrator referred to as some good shenanigans.
Yes. A ruse. Shenanigans. But as I was about to say, I did not grasp Jerry's argument regarding our non-complicity in the Goldcorp affair. As Judith Butler alleges in her rejoinder to Mladen Dollar, subjects are formed through the passionate pursuit of the reprimanding recognition of the state. That the subject turns around or rushes toward the law suggests that the subject lives in passionate expectation of the law. Such love is not beyond interpolation, rather it forms the passionate circle in which the subject becomes ensnared by its own state.
This must have been where I heard the word, ensnared, on the 6th panel on the imperative to fabricate objects.
Was that the one with the clips from Bruce Law Bruce's The Revolution Is My Boyfriend?
You're thinking of a different conference altogether. Rather than lack on what we so disparately needed from Roger Farr before he slipped out without delivering his paper, was his quotation from Van Eyck. To the extent that it conforms to a stereotype, a role tends to congeal, to take on the static nature of its model. Such a role has neither present, nor past, nor future, because its time resembles exposure time, and is, so to speak, a pause in time, time compressed into the dissociated space-time which is that of power whose strength lies in its facility in enforcing both actual separation and false union. No matter how much or how little limelight a given role attains in the public eye, however, its prime function is always that of social adaptation, of integrating people into the well-policed universe of things. Which is why there are hidden cameras always ready to catapult the most pedestrian of lives into the spotlight of instant fame.
Abe Walker was correct. It is at the wine and cheese reception and only at the wine and cheese reception that the internal contradictions of the conference are laid bare.
True. Though I thought his account of sabotage and exodus might have benefited by supplementing the reversal and subtraction of Antonio Negri and the rabid and obscene adoption of etiquette of Stephen Choukaitis, with the intelligent paralyzation of Emile Pouget, and the conscious withdrawal of efficiency of Elizabeth Gilly Flynn. The Wobblies pioneered this tactic of over-identification. They called it following the Book of Rules.
I wish Eric Dice had taken a photograph of the 5th panel through the window from the W Tower across the lane as a follow-up to his Hipsters and Drug Dealer. As you know, Dylan Cree issued documentation, so there is almost no record of the conference on the conference. But we are almost 8.5 minutes into this sauna scene and we are neither sweating nor have we yet spoken of Nietzsche.
Where is John Anderson or Chris Pavsek or Stephen Hubert or Laurie McGilvray or Alison Clay when we need a chairperson to tell us how much time remains?
You know as well as I do that Extra Normal permits only 2 characters in their films at a time.
Time is counter-revolutionary.
We should leave so we don't miss the conference on the conference day 9 scene 2, the last train back to Seattle.
I look forward to cranking one of Dave Chokran's Larry Brown compositions and contemplating Secondary and Loving Rage as we pass across the border where Paul Robeson performed on a flatbed truck in 1952.